If you're searching for the iPhone 18 Pro release date, here's the most consistent expectation right now. Apple is still aiming for an early September launch window, with Wednesday, September 9th widely viewed as the most likely announcement date. From there, pre-orders should follow soon after. And the iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max would typically reach customers and stores about a week later, putting the most likely release window around Friday, September 18th. Now, quick reality check before we go deeper. Until Apple sends invites and confirms dates on the record, everything you're hearing is still a leak-driven timeline based on patterns, supply chain logic, and reporting. But the reason this particular set of dates keeps returning is simple. Apple's iPhone schedule isn't chosen at random. It's built around manufacturing capacity, shipping logistics, carrier upgrade cycles, and the timing of Apple's biggest software releases. So why does September matter so much for the iPhone 18 Pro? Start with the one part of the iPhone that dictates almost everything else, the chip. Apple's iPhone processors and supporting silicon aren't off-the-shelf parts that can be ordered whenever Apple feels like it. They're custom designs produced at massive scale, and that scale requires long-term planning and reserved manufacturing capacity. Partners like TSMC operate on tightly optimized production schedules, and Apple's yearly rhythm helps lock in the wafer allocations and ramp-up windows needed to produce tens of millions of units for launch inventory. In other words, the iPhone 18 Pro release date isn't just a marketing decision made in late summer. The timetable is heavily influenced months in advance by how chip production gets scheduled, queued, and delivered. Then comes the next invisible factor most people don't consider: global freight capacity. Getting iPhones from factories to the rest of the world is a logistics operation measured in enormous volume. Apple needs aircraft space, shipping lanes, regional distribution readiness, and retail channel planning, at a time of year when the rest of the industry is also gearing up for holiday demand. The closer you move toward late fall, the tighter cargo space becomes and the more expensive it gets. Launching in early September gives Apple a strategic advantage. It can secure shipping capacity before the holiday freight rush truly peaks, reduce delivery bottlenecks, and keep early launch momentum strong across key markets. And that ties directly into the business side of the iPhone 18 Pro launch. Apple's biggest iPhone sales surge doesn't happen in isolation. It flows into the year's most lucrative purchasing season. An early September announcement followed by mid to late September availability sets Apple up for strong sales through October, November, and the holiday period, creating the kind of fourth-quarter performance Wall Street expects. This is why the iPhone's autumn cadence has remained so consistent. It doesn't just match consumer attention, it matches Apple's most important revenue window. But the iPhone 18 Pro timeline isn't only about Apple and manufacturing. It also lines up almost perfectly with carrier upgrade behavior. A huge number of iPhone purchases happen through carrier financing, trade-in offers, and annual upgrade plans. Many customers reach upgrade eligibility or renewal decision points around the end of summer and into early fall. When Apple announces a brand new iPhone right in that window, carriers get their best moment of the year to push promotions, lock in renewals, and convince customers to upgrade instead of waiting. That's why September remains so powerful. It syncs the iPhone 18 Pro launch with how millions of people actually buy phones. There's also an Apple services layer to the timing that often goes unnoticed. When someone buys a new iPhone, that purchase tends to trigger or reinforce Apple's subscription ecosystem. iCloud storage, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, AppleCare, and bundle plans. Apple often pairs new devices with trials or timed offers that make the transition feel seamless. You set up your new iPhone, you settle into your apps and accounts, and then subscriptions continue in the background. A consistent September upgrade season keeps that rhythm predictable. It's good for customers because it feels familiar, and it's good for Apple because it strengthens long-term revenue per user. Now let's address the calendar itself, because this is where the rumored iPhone 18 Pro dates become even more specific. Apple has a long history of choosing a clean, high-attention day for its iPhone event, typically in the second week of September. This year, the calendar reportedly adds a wrinkle around Labor Day timing. Apple generally avoids holding major events immediately after that holiday, which is one reason Wednesday, September 9, looks like such a strong candidate for the iPhone 18 Pro announcement. Pre-orders are where things could get slightly unusual. Apple often opens iPhone pre-orders on a Friday following the event. But there's a widely discussed complication in the date math this year. If that Friday lands on a day Apple would prefer to avoid for obvious reasons, Apple could shift pre-orders by a day, potentially to Saturday, similar to what it has done in the past when dates carried major sensitivities. The practical takeaway for buyers is this: even if the announcement lands on September 9th, the pre-order day may not follow the usual exact template, but the release window still likely lands about a week after pre-orders begin, so putting the most likely timeline into plain English. Expect the iPhone 18 Pro to be announced in early September. Expect pre-orders shortly after with a possible one-day adjustment depending on the calendar. And expect the iPhone 18 Pro release date, meaning shipping begins and retail availability opens roughly a week later. Most likely around Friday, September 18th. Now, there's one more reason people are paying extra attention to this particular iPhone cycle: the stage moment. The iPhone launch event isn't just a product reveal anymore. It's Apple's yearly reset of its entire ecosystem narrative: iPhone, iOS, Apple Watch, and the features that tie them together. If Apple is transitioning leadership at the start of September, that could make this keynote feel more significant than a typical year, even if the release cadence stays the same. Apple can keep the same reliable schedule while still using the event to signal a new era in messaging, priorities, and long-term vision. And what about the device everyone keeps whispering about alongside the iPhone 18 Pro, especially in leak culture, the foldable iPhone Ultra? Here's the most realistic way to think about it. Even if Apple shows a foldable model at the same September event, it doesn't guarantee a same-day release window. Foldables are notoriously complex to produce at high yield, and early supply can be tight. That opens the door to a staggered rollout, where the iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max hit shelves first, while the foldable iPhone Ultra could be limited at launch or pushed later into October. That would allow Apple to keep its flagship Pro launch on schedule while protecting the supply chain from overpromising on a product that may not be ready at iPhone scale volumes. So when you see iPhone 18 Pro release date, headlines, remember this: Apple's biggest priority is keeping its core iPhone lineup predictable, available, and deliverable at massive volume. That's why the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max are the safest bets for a September release, even if a more experimental model follows a different timeline. And that brings us to the biggest question: could Apple ever move the iPhone launch away from September? Technically, Apple can do anything, but the cost of shifting the iPhone out of early September is huge. It would pressure silicon allocations, complicate manufacturing ramps, increase freight costs as the holiday shipping season tightens, weaken the carrier upgrade alignment, and disrupt the software and hardware synchronization Apple has built over years, especially the rhythm between iOS releases, developer timelines, and companion product launches like the Apple Watch. The iPhone is the anchor product. When Apple moves the iPhone, everything else has to move with it. That's why the simplest, most SEO-friendly answer to "when is the iPhone 18 Pro coming out?" remains early to mid-September, with a likely announcement on Wednesday, September 9th, and a likely release around Friday, September 18th, pending Apple's official confirmation and any calendar-driven shifts to pre-order day. If you're planning your upgrade, the smartest move is to prepare for that window. Keep an eye on Apple event invitations in late August or early September. Decide your storage and color preferences early if you want day one delivery, and be ready for pre-orders to open quickly after the announcement, possibly with a minor day adjustment depending on the exact dates Apple chooses.